The window wasn't open. It was the cleanest frickin' window you've ever seen in your life. That is, until my mostly raw slab of steak slammed against it and slowly slid down, leaving a trail of bloody juice in its wake. Well, Joe, welcome back to another week of the Powered by Piedmontese podcast, and happy belated birthday.
Hey, thank you very much. Yeah, it was kind of a late night for old Joey Fins here last night.
Wow, how late are we talking?
Well, about midnight is when we closed it down, but I prioritize my sleep and champion my sleep, and I'm usually lights out by like 9:30.
So I can only assume, being a beef guy, working at a beef company, you probably had beef for your birthday.
Oh, yeah. And actually, we had the pleasure of speaking with a gentleman we've worked with for quite a few years now, a very talented live fire cooking chef and enthusiast. And he motivated me to do the same at home. So I did a standing rib roast yesterday and cooked it over an open fire, like fire pit, and made 3 cowboy ribeyes out of it and cooked it all over the live fire, and they turned out fantastic.
I saw the picture. It looked great.
Oh, man, it was tremendous. And then also...
Was your mother-in-law there?
Nope. We cooked everything to shocker, medium rare.
So the mother-in-law couldn't come over?
Nope. And we didn't want to change our menu plans, so...
I understand.
But yeah, it was tremendous, and it was a good time, and feels great to be another year wiser and potentially better looking.
Well, what's nice here is now that you have turned the page on another year, maybe your insights into the podcast will be even more powerful.
Let's hope so.
Well, today we're going to be week 4 of our Reddit stories. We'll see if we make it to week 5. But like I said, I found a few more stories and one new community or thread that I think you're really going to enjoy. But you ready to dive into this?
I am excited.
Okay, so we got another Am I the A-hole? This one is, am I the a-hole for letting my kids eat meat despite my vegetarian wife? Okay, we've talked about this before. That's not happening in my marriage. Ain't no possible chance that's happening.
It's, yeah, and why try to instill your one-sided beliefs on your entire family?
Shall we get into this?
Yeah.
Okay, before we cast too much judgment. Okay, my wife, 40, has suddenly gone vegetarian after watching a documentary on how animals are exploited when they are sent to be slaughtered. Neither of us have been vegetarian before, and we rarely ate vegetarian meals. Our family situation is that I work full-time while she stays home to cook, clean, and pick up the kids from school. This has always been fine, and she's a great housewife. I've never pressured her to be a housewife. That is what she wanted from the start. However, now that she's a vegetarian, she refuses to cook any dishes with meat in it. That's rough. And we have 2 kids, 10 and 12. Has been a decent cook. However, she doesn't know how to cook many vegetarian meals yet, and naturally, I'm craving meat. So before I even get too far down, this guy's a little ballsy here, saying that my wife is just a decent cook.
She's okay.
That's a risk. So his choice of language here has me a little concerned that this marriage might already be over.
Keep going.
Okay. Now, she insists that I never eat meat again, and also insisted upon our kids. Now, we argued over this, but I gave in and said I would try, but no promises. My kid basically refuses to, but since they aren't exactly old enough to cook for themselves, they have to abide by whatever my wife packs them for lunch and dinner. So just to be clear, she explicitly asked me not to eat meat ever again, and I said I would try. Now, here's the issue. Every Monday night, my wife goes to dance class, and it is my responsibility to feed and entertain the kids. After a month of not eating meat, my kids were bugging and begging me to get some non-vegetarian dishes. So I did. I made them not to promise to tell my wife, and I will take them to a restaurant of their choice. We went out, and my kids ate fish and chips. Swing and a miss on. Why go?
Pescatarian?
Yeah, I don't know. I left the receipt in the car, but my wife found it a week later. My wife was very upset at me, and I said I should not have gone behind her back and that I should not be contradicting her to the kids. I explained that I crave meat, and the kids do as well, and it's not fair to impose her choices on to us. Anyway, my wife won't budge from her position that nobody in our family is allowed to eat meat, and I won't budge from the fact that I should be allowed to eat meat when she's not around, and so should the kids. I'm not asking her to make non-veg dishes. I'm arguing that I and the kids should be able to choose to eat what I want. Anyway, am I the a-hole for lying to my wife, contradicting her parenting and also encouraging my children to hide secrets from my wife.
No. And with that, a couple things. Like those kids need animal protein.
They're 10 and 12. They're growing.
Yeah, they're growing and they need protein to grow.
Yeah. And in most families, again, if you are going to be vegetarian and you're trying to get protein from plants, you're having to eat a humongous amount of plants to
Obscene
achieve.
amount.
Yeah. I can't say that's healthy either.
No. And like the idea of crushing like an entire a family-sized container of spinach every day just to be healthy.
Yeah.
No thanks. But also, I wonder if there's an edit down here where it's like, it's okay, guys, we squashed this bug because my wife is back to eating meat now.
And well, let's see how this was posted. 3 years ago. Okay, so this is archived. Certainly by now, maybe they're back. And that's where we talked a few weeks ago about documentaries being sensationalized, or you get too emotional and you make a quick response to your life. I guarantee the documentary she watched, like it was that Dominion one, and they picked the worst of the worst to show people. That is not how largely the industry operates, but they picked the most awful scene and shoved that down people's throats saying, this is why you shouldn't eat meat. I have a huge problem with that.
But it also, like being in the industry, when we watch things like that, it's just kind of, it puts such a sour taste in your mouth to the point where you're just like, ew, like that is kind of messed up. Like, I don't like that. But that's not, that's a microcosm of the whole scale and system.
And there is no edits to the storytelling here from the father. But, I would have liked to, if my wife suddenly wants to go vegetarian and wants to impose it on the rest of us, that's a huge decision for the family. So, I'm going to stop and be like, let's talk about this. What about that documentary made it seem so awful that you don't want to eat meat at all anymore?
Yes, but also you could use this as an opportunity to say, okay, no problem. You can cook your vegetarian dishes. We'll just use them as a side dish.
But then he's working all day, right? He doesn't seem like be the one to go home and cook as it is. Even when he has the chance to, he takes his kids out to eat. He's not going to be cooking this, and she's clearly not going to cook any meat.
No, and also being a stay-at-home, a homemaker, she's got a lot of time potentially to watch these documentaries and kind of become...
Watch them alone.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have anyone else offering any other commentary.
So I could see her almost being a bit of a big-time worry worm because she has some time at home, if she gets all of her duties done for the day or whatever she needs to do, to sit down, in the afternoon, watch a documentary, and then just worry about life.
Have a glass of wine and then watch it and become more emotional about it.
Oh, man.
And that's where she watched the worst of the worst. And that's where, if this is my wife, I'm going to say, honey, I agree. Like watching animals get slaughtered is not fun for anybody. Even as a full-blown meat eater in the beef business, I don't want to watch it. But I'm telling you right now, we can choose better programs to source our proteins from. We don't have to give it up altogether. So let's find people who do it the right way, who aren't going to abuse and exploit animals during the slaughter process. This could have been fixed with just straight conversation.
Yeah.
So this shows me that this marriage and household, like, it's broken.
Although that is a very uphill battle because there's really no quote unquote right way of harvesting an animal.
It's not, but it is a part of.
It's championing that animal to give thanks again to it because we're enjoying, what it has become.
And that's the sad part because again, they showed the worst example of what a slaughterhouse could be when that represents less than 1% of how it's actually done.
She should watch Poisoned.
Just to get a better view?
Just so she quits eating chicken.
I really think she should listen to a podcast like this that lets people know, like, yes, you watched an awful documentary. If I watched it, I too say, this is awful. But that's not how it's done. Again, there's that gotcha marketing, right? So, again, I just wish, and then to oppose us down to the kids who have largely been eating meat. You're not going to probably eat meat at 2 years old, but they've been eating meat for almost a decade. The husband's been eating meat. He's probably likely 40. He's been eating meat for 3 decades, 4 decades. You can't make a quick change like that.
No, and that's my biggest qualm with this whole situation is like those kids need, at this point in time in their lives, they need that like animal-based protein now more than ever.
Yeah. And largely all these comments, this guy was not voted the a-hole. And the wife's not considered the a-hole either, but like they're questioning the communication between these two. Because again, it was such a quick change and like there's no room for rebuttal. She puts her foot down. This is it. You know, I find the receipt in the car's hilarious reaction. I can imagine myself, how'd that get in there?
Yeah.
I let someone borrow my car. That's not mine.
Would have been great if it was like a Fogo de Chao like type.
Yeah, total meat heat. Like fish and chips sounds like safer of the options. Because then you could almost argue like, well, it's kind of a pescatarian
Yeah.
dish.
We're just dipping our toes back into the meat world.
Or at least, again, letting our kids have a choice, especially at 10 to 12. Like, these kids have a mind of their own. And I've read, in digging up stories, it seems like a lot of the vegetarian community, yes, they want their kids to be vegan or vegetarian, and they raise them that way. But, like, they do allow some of their kids to make these choices themselves, which obviously in this case, because she's been vegetarian for like a week, she's not going to let anyone make any other decision. That's tough.
Or also, like, what do they? I mean, wouldn't you almost think too, like, well, we got some stuff in the freezer, like we can always just eat that because you're not going to throw away protein in your freezer just because you changed your ways.
It wasn't part of the story, but perhaps she did.
That would be crushing.
She's home alone all day. Kids are at school. Husband's at work. She's going to go just maneuver out the freezer and fridge. And this guy's going to come back to a freezer full of E. coli-laden plants. That's a risk.
Or the black bean veggie patties.
Oh, yeah, well, those are okay. Not the worst thing I've had.
Yeah, but don't want to live off those.
No. Well, let's put that one away. Safely say, not the a-hole.
I'd go with that, yeah.
And I hope this couple stays together, but like, I'm concerned for them.
Let's just hope their communication is improved.
It has to be. Like I said, again, if she's eating meat, eating meat again, I bet this family's wholesome. And they're on their way to a bright future.
3 years later, she's got to be eating meat now.
Yeah, you can't give it up for that long. So I have a new thread.
Oh.
It took me a while to actually figure out what this means, but it essentially is, today I effed up. So now we're talking about a story where somebody admittedly did something they probably shouldn't have.
Relatable.
Now, I haven't read this whole story. I've only read like the first few paragraphs to kind of like get hooked. It's a great one. I love it. I question whether or not it's actually real because this guy's story writing is fantastic. I might not do a great job of reading it, but this is something.
Is it like Chat GTP? Like,
I don't know. Yeah, this could be a book. Could be a story.
Oh.
So I think you're going to like this one. You ready for it? Today I effed up by throwing my steak out a window.
We've done that before.
Yeah, we do it every day. Go ahead and start the morning. So last night, my wife's boss from her brand new job invited us over for dinner. On the drive over, my wife reiterated many times to me just how important it was to make a good impression. I would thrive in that position. Your boss is fine. I'll win her over. I scoffed and arrogantly informed my silly wife that I always make good impressions. My wife's boss is a single lady in her 50s, so it was just the three of us. We chit-chatted over drinks and salads and seemed to be really hitting it off. She laughed at my well-timed, perfectly appropriate jokes, and my wife seemed pleased. This sounds just like you, Joe.
Did you write this story?
About you and your wife? Soon, she brought out the main course, a nice, big, juicy steak for each of us. As I began to cut into my steak, I was discouraged to discover how undercooked the steak was. Now, I've had my fair share of rare steak. I prefer medium, but I can handle rare. This was several minutes on a hot grill short of rare. I probably could have resuscitated the cow had I tried. Instead, I sat there fidgeting with my knife and fork, worrying about how I was going to get away with not eating the steak. You think I'm vegan or claiming veganism? No, I already feigned great enthusiasm about seeing the steak. Just then, our hostess excused herself to the kitchen to take care of some dessert preparations. As I looked around across the fancy dining room, I saw an open window of her third-story apartment. A cartoon light bulb peered over my head. I knew I had to be decisive, realizing that she could return at any moment, so I committed. I grabbed the steak with my hand and gently shook off the juice and executed a perfect throw right through the center of the open window. Here's where I effed up. The window wasn't open. It was the cleanest frickin' window you've ever seen in your life. That is, until my mostly raw slab of steak slammed against it and slowly slid down, leaving a trail of bloody juice in its wake. My wife, whose steak was a nice medium rare and was unaware of my predicament, turned, jaw dropped, and stared. I feel so bad for really both of them at this point. Stared at me like I was an alien from another planet. This look then slowly morphed into more of "there's no place on this planet you can ever hide from me" expression of my demonic anger. So she's staring at him in disbelief.
He's getting looked straight through at this point.
I can feel that. You can feel that. Our listeners can feel this look. Now, my wife's boss heard the thud of steak on the window impact and came quickly. She took in the scene of the steak sitting on the window. Poor lady. She saw the steak sitting on the windowsill, the bloody trail, my empty plate, and then gave me an inquisitive, puzzled look. Hey, I didn't know what to say. It felt like a minute of silence, but it was probably just 3 to 4 seconds. Finally, the best I could manage was, I'm sorry. I'm such a klutz. I don't know. I was just cutting it and it slipped. And just asked my wife, am I really klutz? Right, honey? I am, right? No help coming from that direction. So I will clean this up. I can't believe this. I'm so sorry. Both women continued to stare at me like I had escaped from the loony bin as I smeared the blood around the window with my cloth napkin, dusted off the steak, and continued to mutter my incoherent explanation. I knew no one was buying the story. I knew what I had to do. I sheepishly returned to my seat and proceeded to eat every bite of that disgusting, cold, chewy, bloody raw steak. I remained pretty quiet the rest of the evening. My wife's only 2 words to me since the incident are, I'm fine.
Oh.
I've heard that one before, right? Now, too long didn't read. I mean, then he kind of goes into just short forming this, but this guy, like, I don't want to say bring back the a-hole thread, but like, what do you do in that situation?
You just be a man and you just
choke it down.
Ask for some more water, maybe get a couple more glasses of red wine. But I'm just envisioning like when it's comical no matter what it is. If you can throw something to the wall and it sticks on there, and then just kind of, I'm envisioning just kind of a slow fall down the window. Mm-hmm. What do you say to get yourself out of that? Like it jumped. It's so raw. It's still alive.
Well, I mean, I like to think I can think quick on my feet. And obviously doing a podcast, we have to think quickly. So if I had this, we were I'll bring a side story here. We had Joe Rogan to dinner at our restaurant, right? That was a great time. Joe Rogan.
Yep.
And a couple other comedians. Our chefs might have been nervous. I don't know. They usually do a great job. Those steaks came out mooing as well.
Very rare. Blue.
Right? Blue for sure. Like I said, I still ate it because it still tasted great. Mm-hmm. So like I don't think I'd ever would have been in that situation now. So in this case, I think if I was going to be put in this position, that steak would be destroyed and over well done.
Or you just kind of hack it around on your plate and eat the pieces that you want, but then you leave a majority of on your plate, or take it home and microwave it.
Yeah, tell the boss like, hey, this was fantastic. I just think my eyes were more hungry than my belly was. Like, can I take this home? Like, I love it. It's great, but I just can't finish it all.
Yeah. That's probably the more appropriate, especially first impression route to take. But I will say that I also do have a one-liner at a restaurant typically, and I'll clean my entire plate, and then they'll ask, oh, how was it? And it's like, well, I spilled half on the floor. And they're like, really? And they're like looking on the floor, and I'm like, no, it tasted fine. I ate it all. Take my plate.
So, I mean, this guy maybe could have put it in his pocket.
That's pretty egregious, though, to like
go to the bathroom and try and stuff it in the trash somewhere.
Yes, but like to kind of play the timing of the eyes game and see your opportunity and fling one out the window.
And to expect that he was going to have a precise throw. It would have been nice to know how far the window was away from the table. I mean, if it's like a small apartment, the 3rd-story apartment, there's a chance it was like just here. Like just a quick little pitch and it would have been fine. But, it's just going to land in the apartment building's lawn somewhere.
Yeah, did it say where this was?
Apartment building.
But like, could you imagine like being in New York City and all of a sudden you're just walking down the street and all of a sudden
hit by a job,
New York strip just comes flying down on the sidewalk?
Yeah. And so quick thinking, if I'm in this spot, again, I would have never have pitched the steak. But if I did, there's no way to play it off as a joke at this point, because steak's expensive. You're not just going to throw it. I would just say, I'm really sorry. This was a little more rare for my doing, but I didn't want to ruin a great evening. So I just tried to get rid of it as quick as I can. I'm so sorry. Like, what else to say?
Yeah. Or, I mean, you pull that reverse Uno card and you say, can you take my steak back and show it a little bit more fire, please?
Yeah.
I hate being that guy, but like,
yeah, you're right. Now that thinking back, that is probably the most appropriate response is, hey, this steak looks absolutely fantastic. Would you mind or can I even do it? Can I run back to the kitchen and just flash this quick? It's a little bit too rare for my liking. There's nothing wrong with that.
And I think being out to eat, first impression, I think the staff would be more than accommodating for it. I mean, the kitchen staff might be a little upset, but
Yeah.
whatever, par for the course. They get stuff sent back to them all the time. So it's for them, it's just whatever. But for you, you look like a polite.
Now, in any circumstance, would you have blamed your wife for this? You should have seen it. My wife got mad at me. She got so upset she took my steak and tried to throw it out the window.
Well, and that would have been, am I the a-hole? Because he would have probably said, oh, your steak is cooked perfectly. Do you want to switch?
Yeah. But again, that's where I question maybe the validity of this story is like, it just seems almost too comical, like an improv of sorts. But I loved it.
Very well written.
So I like that thread, and I'm going to try and dig into more of those. I'm understanding Reddit a little bit more. So as I maybe I can find better stories through that thread, because I think people destroying their lives or destroying relationships is humorous. Love it. Now,
especially because they go to such a public forum to air their laundry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the best part.
It's bewildering, though.
So love the story. I hope you as listeners loved it too. But you ready to turn the page on that one?
I think so, yeah.
So the last one here is a new thread too. It's called "Is It BS?" And this one here, it's not my favorite story out there, but I think it exposes some nice things that I was going to talk about here. But is being vegan to prevent animal death causes more animal deaths than simply eating beef? And so in this thread, it's talking about, to produce plants or produce almonds, there is still death involved, but it's largely overlooked by the vegan community because, again, you're not eating meat. So the thread here is, I want to preface, I'm not vegan, but many of my friends are. I've also seen firsthand the horrors that are commercial farming practices and the cruelty animals face in many of those corporate, profit-centric slaughterhouses. I've considered it. I just haven't been convicted enough to muster up the willpower to become vegan. Now, the post and references as follows. Veganism means killing the fewest animals. Studies estimate that producing the same amount of plant protein as animal protein kills 25 times more animals. And by there, we're talking about, well, here it goes and say, tilling the soil slaughters mice, rabbits, and rodents. Almond milk production alone kills 4 billion bees, where one cow provides almost 500 pounds of meat, and a grass-fed carnivore diet essentially is vegan. Now, I've always felt, although unnecessary, corporate food production is the root of evil instead of consuming animals. I grew up on a small farm, and animals lived very wonderful lives. But the day I drove through Texas and saw cattle mills and saw chicken farms up close, I immediately understood why people choose to be vegan in respect to animal rights. So this is a topic, there's not really much of a question in there, but I think this is the root of what most people, again, choose to be vegan or vegetarian. But again, they picked out the one stories of terror that goes on in the slaughter industry. That could be less than 1% of what actually happens.
They look at the factory element of it and assimilate that that's what happens everywhere. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of interesting that she actually came from, a small farm, and she says all our animals lived a great life. And it's like, again, we've preached the importance on this of knowing where all of your food comes from, whether it be vegetables, whether it be beef, chicken, pork, whatever. Knowing where your food comes from, how it was raised, how it was treated, like that alone you can feel so much better in versus driving by a big hoop house or a 20,000 head feedlot. You're kind of like, ooh, that's a little different for me.
But and these people also have to understand you have to pay for that difference too. So again, if you're going to choose to buy cheap stuff, that's what you're supporting. Is you're supporting what this person says here is these corporate profit-centric slaughterhouses.
And that's the interesting time about today's world is nothing's really cheap anymore. Mm. So you're getting an inferior product with all of the Rolodex of issues that she's perceiving as issues, but still paying a premium price.
And I love the comment, and I haven't seen enough, and I'd love to be able to ask more of these questions to vegans and stuff, because again, this guy is right. When you're talking about all this tilling, that's not regenerative. You're destroying a lot of the soil, right? Because you're going to turn it up and the wind's going to blow away this topsoil and ruin a lot of the land that it's on. But yes, you're going to be killing the mice, rabbits, bugs, all these things, snakes. You're right. That's what's producing a lot of this crop that people eat. So, there's still death involved. But like veganism claims like no cruelty to animals at all. But like then as a vegan, like you literally can't eat anything.
Well, and that's also a good point because it's not only harming the animals or whatever, but it's actually harming the ecosystem in which those
Yes.
animals live and survive and thrive in,
But again, they largely overlook that because they're not as cute as cows.
or because they don't burp.
Yeah, who knows? But that's what I want to ask them because again, they're going to wash over that and be like, "Oh, that's just part of it." But like again, that's so a part of eating healthy meat. Like death is unfortunately a part of the food chain.
Circle of life.
Again, in any sort of environmental aspect, from other animals eating animals, humans eating animals. Again, like it is part of life. And we talk about even almonds here. You know, again, the displacement of bees. And what I've read here is that they're treating, especially when it comes to almonds or avocados too, it's the pesticides used to keep the pests away on these animals that kill the bees. And obviously, bees are a huge part of our ecosystem for crops across the board. And almonds consume just behind cattle in their water consumption. But yet they praise almonds for their nutrients, their protein, their almond milk as the solution to combat having to go to meat or dairy. Like almonds aren't the answer.
No.
They're killing a lot more.
Well, and how much water they take to grow.
Yeah, but again, you're killing all these bees. We need bees for everything else in this world.
The thing too about the ecosystem comment is nature and all of that balances itself out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always a check with a balance. And when look at, early pre-civilized America, how many bison roamed this country? There was no balance for them.
Yeah. Same thing we take with deer. They do claim, especially in South America, cattle is just deforesting the rainforest. But again, that's in South America. Choose beef from here, where we're doing things the right way. All these bad storytelling of slaughterhouses are happening outside largely America. So again, quit this gotcha marketing and just focus on the programs that are doing things the right way.
It's simple.
Well, that wasn't a very fun, comical last thread, but again, we've talked about vegans and vegetarians a lot, so I think it was insightful to at least bring in part of it. And so I would like to have an episode coming up here where, again, we'd largely address more issues that we're seeing vegans and vegetarians ask, because I like them. I probably like them as people, but I want them to be better educated on the right things, not always the bad things.
Absolutely. And there is education that can go on that would help them and hopefully potentially change their mind or provide just greater insight as to why they're deciding to do what they're doing.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. And, for all the vegetarians that might be listening or the meat eaters, we have a discount code for you. So go ahead and use the code PBP26 and you can get 26% off all your beef.
Wow.
And let's give them some freebies.
You think?
So, we're coming up, September here? We have a big steak giveaway coming up. Tomahawks.
Oh.
Remember that one?
I think so.
Okay, so spend $200. $200. And use the code THAWK, and you'll get 2 free 36-ounce tomahawks.
2 free tomahawks?
You can be Joe Finnegan for a weekend with this type of steak.
I'm going to actually take advantage of that deal with the PBP26 discount code.
We'll hop on because next week's going to change. So until then, we'll see you next week.